At a family dinner, he called her wife a poor fat pig, threw divorce papers in her face, told her she should be grateful anyone married her. What he didn't know, the woman he just humiliated owned 65% of his father's company. She'd been buying it piece by piece for 8 months while he laughed at her. And in 72 hours, she'd walk into a boardroom and destroy everything he thought he controlled. This is the story of how a quiet wife became the most dangerous woman her husband never saw coming. Before we dive into how the wife he called a poor fat pig claimed everything, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. It takes 1 second. And drop a comment telling us what time it is, where you're watching from. I want to know who's here with me for this story. Alright, let's get into it. She walked into the dining room and felt it immediately. Every eye turned to her. Some curious, some judging, all waiting for something to happen. The chandelier threw soft light across the polished oak table, making everything look perfect on the surface. But Emma knew better. Nothing here was perfect. Philip sat at the head of the table in his expensive suit, grinning like he'd already won something. His father sat beside him, quiet but smug. His mother kept glancing at Emma like she was a stain on the tablecloth. The mistress, Jessica, sat across from Philip, her hand resting on her stomach like she was protecting something precious. Emma knew the truth about that belly, but tonight wasn't the time. Not yet. Philip cleared his throat. Well, look who finally decided to join us. His voice had that edge to it, sharp and mocking. A few people chuckled. Emma sat down slowly, smoothing her dress, keeping her face calm even though her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Traffic was bad, she said quietly. Traffic. Philip repeated the word like it was funny. You know what I think? I think you're just slow. Slow at everything. More laughter. Jessica smiled behind her wine glass. Philip's mother pursed her lips, nodding like he'd said something wise. Emma folded her hands in her lap, pressing them together to stop the shaking. Have you ever sat at a table where everyone wanted you gone? Philip leaned back in his chair, swirling his drink. I've been thinking, Emma. About us. About this marriage. The room went quiet. Even the people who were pretending not to listen stopped moving. And honestly, I don't know why I stayed this long. Emma's throat tightened, but she didn't look away. Philip, maybe we should talk about this privately. Privately. He laughed, loud and cruel. Why? Everyone here already knows the truth. You're not what I thought you were. You're not what anyone thought you were. He stood up, and the whole room seemed to hold its breath. Look at you. You've let yourself go. You're fat, you're boring, and honestly, you're lucky I married you at all. A woman like you? Where did you come from? Jessica covered her mouth, pretending to be shocked, but her eyes were gleaming. Philip's father nodded slowly. Son's got a point, he muttered. Emma felt something crack inside her chest, but she kept her face still. Her mother's voice whispered in her head again. Patience, Emma. Let them talk. Let them show you who they are. Philip walked around the table, his footsteps loud on the hardwood floor. He stopped right beside her chair, looking down at her like she was nothing. You came from nothing, Emma. Poor family. No connections. No class. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me? By being a burden. Emma's hands tightened in her lap. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw her glass. She wanted to tell him everything, show him everything, destroy him right here in front of everyone. But she didn't. Not yet. Philip, I've always supported you. I've always been there. Support me. He laughed again, louder this time. You? You've done nothing. My father's company is struggling because of decisions I had to make alone. Where were you? Sitting at home, eating, doing nothing useful. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded stack of papers. Emma's stomach dropped. She knew what those were before he even opened his mouth. I'm done, Emma. I'm done pretending this works. He threw the papers on the table in front of her. They slid across the polished wood and stopped right at her plate. Divorce papers. The words were printed in bold at the top, impossible to miss. The room went dead silent. Someone gasped. Jessica's smile widened. Philip's mother looked satisfied, like she'd been waiting for this moment for years. "You're just a poor fat pig," Philip said, his voice low and sharp. "You should be grateful that no one married you at all." The words hit her like a slap. Emma stared at the papers, her vision blurring for just a second. Then she blinked, and everything came back into focus. She stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. Every eye was on her, waiting, judging, expecting her to cry, to beg, to fall apart. But Emma didn't do any of those things. She picked up the silk scarf from her lap and folded it carefully, pressing the fabric between her fingers. She could still smell the lavender. She could still hear her mother's voice. "Thank you for showing me who you are, Philip," she said quietly. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't break. It was calm, steady, and cold. Philip blinked, caught off guard. "What?" Emma turned and walked toward the door. Each step echoed in the silent room. She didn't look back. She didn't say another word. She just left, carrying the scarf, carrying the weight of everything she knew and everything they didn't. Behind her, the whispers started. "Did you see her face? She didn't even fight back. Poor thing. She knows she's nothing without him." Jessica laughed softly. Philip sat back down, grinning, already telling some joke to his father. They thought it was over. They thought they'd won. But Emma knew the truth. She'd known it for months. While Philip paraded around like he owned the world, Emma had been working in silence. Every document she signed, every account she opened, every stock she purchased under names they'd never recognize. She'd taken over his father's failing company piece by piece, quietly, carefully, invisibly. Philip thought he was in control, but he'd been working for her for months without knowing it. She was the anonymous billionaire who saved the business he thought he was running. And now she had everything. The company, the power, the proof of every lie, every betrayal, every cruel word. Emma walked out into the cool night air, the door closing softly behind her. She stood on the steps for a moment, looking up at the stars. Her heart was still pounding, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was something else. Something sharper. Something stronger. She touched the scarf one more time, feeling the silk between her fingers. "Patience," she whispered to herself. Just a little more patience. Inside that house, they were laughing. Outside, Emma was planning. And when the storm finally hit, they wouldn't see it coming. Would you stay silent if someone humiliated you like that, or would you strike back immediately? Emma's silence tonight wasn't a weakness. It was the last calm moment before everything changed. And they had no idea what was coming. 3 days after the dinner, Emma sat in a small cafe on the edge of town where nobody knew her name. The morning light came through the window, hitting the table where she had spread out folders, documents, and her laptop. A cup of coffee sat untouched beside her, going cold while she reviewed everything one more time. Numbers, names, transactions, shell companies, coded accounts. Every piece fit together like a puzzle only she could see. She'd been building this for months, one quiet move at a time, and now it was almost complete. Her phone buzzed. A text from her lawyer, Ms. Green. "Final documents ready. Just say when." Emma stared at the message for a long moment, then set the phone down without replying. Not yet. Timing was everything, and she knew it. Strike too soon, and Philip would scramble. Wait too long, and the moment would lose its power. She had to be patient, just like her mother taught her. The cafe door opened, and a woman walked in, laughing loudly on her phone. Emma glanced up, then back down at her papers. The woman ordered something sweet and left. The cafe was quiet again. Emma liked it that way. Nobody bothered her here. Nobody asked questions. She pulled out a leather notebook, old and worn, the one her mother used to write in. Emma had found it in a box after the funeral, filled with recipes, grocery lists, and small notes in the margins. One note she'd read 100 times. When the world underestimates you, build quietly. Let power emerge naturally, without rage, without cry. Emma traced her finger over the words, feeling the indent of the pen her mother had used years ago. She wondered if her mother ever imagined a moment like this. Did she know Emma would need this advice so badly one day? Emma opened another folder and pulled out a stack of receipts. Each one represented a piece of Philip's father's company she'd bought, without anyone knowing. The old man thought he was selling to investors, anonymous buyers who wanted to help save his failing business. He had no idea those buyers were all Emma. She'd used different names, different companies, different lawyers. Every transaction was legal, documented, untraceable back to her until she wanted it to be. And now she owned 63% of the company. Philip thought he was running things, making decisions, playing the big boss. But every decision he made, every meeting he attended, every contract he signed, it all rolled up to her. He was working for his wife and didn't even know it. Have you ever had a secret so big it felt like it could explode if you said it out loud? Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email. The subject line read, "Stock transfer complete." Emma opened it, scanned the details, then closed it. Another piece locked into place. She opened a spreadsheet on her laptop and updated the numbers. 64% now. She was adding more every week, slowly, carefully, making sure no one noticed the pattern. Philip's father was desperate to save the company. So desperate he didn't ask the right questions. He just took the money and signed the papers. Emma almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then she remembered the way he looked at her at that dinner, nodding along when Philip called her worthless. The pity disappeared. She closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair, staring out the window. People walked by on the street, busy with their own lives, their own problems. None of them knew what she was carrying. None of them knew the weight of what she was about to do. Emma thought about Philip. He was probably at the office right now, sitting in that big leather chair, feet up on the desk, telling someone what to do. He loved that chair. He loved the way people looked at him when he walked into a room. He thought he was powerful. He thought he was untouchable. But power built on lies always collapses eventually, doesn't it? Emma packed up her papers and slid them into her bag. She left cash on the table for the coffee she didn't drink and walked out into the cool morning air. The city was waking up around her, cars honking, people rushing to work, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery down the street. Everything looked normal. Everything felt normal. But Emma knew better. She knew that beneath the surface, everything was shifting, changing, moving toward something none of them were ready for. She walked slowly, hands in her coat pockets, thinking through the next steps. She needed to finalize the paperwork with Ms. Green. She needed to confirm the board meeting date. She needed to prepare the evidence folder, the one that would leave no room for doubt, no room for excuses. Photos, emails, transaction records, everything that proved Philip's lies, Jessica's manipulation, and the family's cruelty. Her phone rang. Emma pulled it out and saw Philip's name on the screen. She stared at it for 3 rings, then answered. "Hello. Where are you?" Philip's voice was sharp, annoyed. "I came by the apartment. You're not here." "I'm out," Emma said calmly. "Out where?" "We need to talk about the papers." "You haven't signed them yet." Emma kept walking, her footsteps steady on the sidewalk. "I'm thinking about it." Philip laughed, that same cruel sound from the dinner. "Thinking about it?" "Emma, there's nothing to think about. Sign the papers. Move on. It's better for both of us." "Is it?" Emma asked. Her voice was quiet, but there was something underneath it, something sharp Philip didn't catch. "Yes. Look, I'm not trying to be mean, but we both know this marriage was a mistake. You'll be fine. You'll figure something out. You always do." He paused. "Just sign the papers, Emma. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Emma stopped walking. She stood on the corner, people moving around her, the city noise buzzing in her ears. "I'll think about it," she said again. "I have to go." She hung up before he could respond. Her hand tightened around the phone for a moment. Then she slipped it back into her pocket and kept walking. Philip had no idea. None of them did. They thought she was beaten, broken, ready to disappear quietly. They thought the divorce papers were the end of her story. But Emma knew something they didn't. The story was just starting. She reached her apartment building and climbed the stairs slowly, each step giving her time to think. Inside, the apartment was quiet and neat, exactly how she left it. She dropped her bag on the couch and walked to the small desk by the window. There, in a locked drawer, was the folder. The evidence. She unlocked it and pulled it out, spreading everything across the desk. Corporate filings showing her ownership. Emails between Philip and Jessica discussing the fake pregnancy. Text messages proving the lies. Bank statements showing the money Philip thought he controlled actually belonged to her. Every piece of paper was a weapon, carefully sharpened, waiting for the right moment. Emma sat down and stared at the evidence. Her mother's voice came back to her. Power is for protecting what matters, not for showing off. Emma reached for her phone and texted Ms. Green. Let's move forward. Schedule the board meeting. The reply came fast. Done. 2 weeks from today. Emma set the phone down and exhaled slowly. 2 weeks. 14 days. That's all the time Philip had left to enjoy his illusion of power. After that, everything would change. The room felt heavy with anticipation, like the air before a thunderstorm. Emma could feel it building inside her, the quiet thrill of knowing what was coming. She wasn't angry anymore. Anger was messy, loud, unfocused. What she felt now was sharper, colder. She felt like someone who had been pushed too far and had finally decided to push back, but with precision, with strategy, with the kind of patience that turns invisible people into unstoppable forces. Would you wait 2 weeks if you had the power to destroy someone who humiliated you? Or would you act immediately? Emma knew the answer. She'd waited months. She could wait 2 more weeks. Because, when the moment came, when she finally stood up in that boardroom and revealed who she really was, it wouldn't just be satisfying. It would be devastating. And they would never see it coming. Emma sat across from Ms. Green in a private conference room downtown, the kind of place where deals were made and secrets were kept. The walls were soundproof, the windows tinted, and nobody asked questions about who came and went. Ms. Green was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and efficient, the kind of lawyer who didn't waste words or time. She slid a stack of documents across the table. These are the final acquisition papers. Sign here, here, and here. Once you do, you'll officially own 67% of the company. Majority control. Full authority. Emma picked up the pen, her hand steady. She signed each page carefully, watching the ink dry on her new identity. Not Emma Hale, the dismissed wife. Emma Carter, the hidden corporate powerhouse. She'd used her maiden name for all the shell companies, all the coded accounts, every transaction that built her invisible empire. Philip never bothered to check. He never thought she was smart enough, resourceful enough, or angry enough to do something like this. That was his first mistake. It's done, Ms. Green said, collecting the papers and sliding them into a leather folder. You now control the company Philip thinks belongs to his father. Legally, irrevocably, completely. Emma leaned back in her chair, letting the weight of it settle over her. Months of early morning meetings, coded emails, and anonymous wire transfers had led to this moment. She'd built an empire in the shadows, while everyone watched her like she was nothing. What about the board meeting? Emma asked. 2 weeks from today, just like we planned. I've already sent the notices. Philip will be there, his father, the mistress if she's bold enough to show up, and everyone else who thought you were irrelevant. Ms. Green's lips curved into a thin smile. They're going to walk in expecting a routine update, and instead they'll find out who really owns everything. Emma felt a spark of satisfaction, sharp and cold. Good. What about the evidence folder? Ms. Green reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thick, organized binder. Everything you asked for. Corporate filings proving your ownership. Emails between Philip and Jessica discussing the fake pregnancy. Text messages showing their affair. Bank statements showing the money he's been spending thinking it's his. Photos from the dinner where he humiliated you. Everything is documented, dated, and legally admissible. She slid the binder across the table. This folder doesn't just prove you own the company. It destroys any credibility Philip has left. Emma opened the binder slowly, flipping through the pages. Each one was a piece of the puzzle, a snapshot of betrayal, arrogance, and lies. She stopped on a photo taken at the family dinner. Philip's face was twisted in a sneer, his finger pointing at her. his mouth open mid-insult. Jessica sat beside him, smiling. His parents looked smug. And there was Emma, sitting quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her face calm. Looking at it now, she didn't see weakness. She saw strategy. She saw patience. She saw someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Have you ever looked back at a painful moment and realized it was actually the beginning of your power? Ms. Green cleared her throat. One more thing. The mistress, Jessica. She's been telling people she's pregnant with Philip's child. We both know that's not true. I've confirmed through a private investigator that she's never been pregnant. She lied to manipulate the situation, to make herself seem important, to pressure Philip into leaving you faster. Ms. Green tapped the binder. It's all in there. Medical records from her doctor. Time-stamped photos showing her drinking and smoking during the so-called pregnancy. Credit card receipts for purchases no pregnant woman would make. She's a fraud, Emma. And now you have proof. Emma stared at the documents, her jaw tightening. The fake pregnancy had been the final insult, the thing that made her feel like everything was crashing down. But it had also been the thing that pushed her to dig deeper, to stop playing defense and start playing offense. Does Philip know she lied? No. He believes her. Or at least he's pretending to believe her because it gives him an excuse to leave you without looking like the villain. Ms. Green leaned forward. But when you expose this in the boardroom, he won't be able to hide. Everyone will know. His family, his colleagues, his so-called friends. They'll all see him for what he is. Emma closed the binder and ran her hand over the leather cover. Good. I want them to see everything. She stood up, picking up her bag and slinging it over her shoulder. Thank you, Ms. Green. I'll see you at the board meeting. Ms. Green stood as well, extending her hand. It's been an honor working with you, Emma. Not many people have the patience and intelligence to pull off what you've done. Most people would have cracked by now. But you didn't. You waited. You planned. You won. Emma shook her hand, feeling the firm grip, the respect in it. I haven't won yet, but I will. Emma left the office and stepped out into the afternoon sun. The city was loud and busy, people rushing past her, taxis honking, street vendors calling out. She blended into the crowd, just another face in the chaos. Nobody looked at her twice. Nobody knew who she was or what she carried in her bag. That was exactly how she wanted it. She walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench, watching pigeons peck at crumbs on the ground. Children played on the swings, their laughter cutting through the noise. A couple walked by holding hands, lost in their own world. Everything looked normal, peaceful, safe. But Emma knew the truth. Beneath the surface, everything was shifting. In 2 weeks, the ground would break open, and everyone who underestimated her would fall through. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. One from Philip. Emma, seriously, sign the papers. Stop dragging this out. She didn't reply. Another from Jessica, sent to Philip but forwarded by mistake to Emma. Can't wait to get rid of her. She's so pathetic. Emma saved the screenshot and added it to her growing collection. Every insult, every cruel word, every dismissive gesture was another nail in the coffin they were building for themselves. She opened her mother's old diary, the one she carried everywhere now. The pages were yellowed, the handwriting faded but still readable. Her mother had written about strength, about patience, about surviving in a world that didn't always value women like them. One entry stood out. People will underestimate you because you're quiet. Let them. Quiet people see more, hear more, and plan better. When you finally speak, make sure it's something they'll never forget. Emma closed the diary and held it against her chest. I won't forget, Mom. I promise. She stood up and walked through the park, past the children, past the couples, past the vendors selling roasted nuts and cold drinks. She walked with purpose now, her mind mapping out every step of the next 2 weeks. She needed to stay invisible. She needed to let Philip and his family believe they'd won. She needed them to be confident, comfortable, and unsuspecting. Because the bigger the fall, the louder the crash. And Emma wanted everyone to hear it. That evening, she returned to her apartment and spread the evidence folder across her dining table. She organized everything by category: financial documents, emails, text messages, photos, witness statements. Each section was labeled, color-coded, and cross-referenced. It was meticulous, airtight, impossible to refute. She imagined the moment she would slide this folder across the boardroom table, the moment their faces would change from confidence to confusion to horror. She imagined Philip stammering, trying to explain, trying to lie his way out. She imagined Jessica going pale, realizing her fake pregnancy was exposed. She imagined Philip's father, the man who nodded along when his son called her worthless, realizing he'd been selling his company to the woman he dismissed. Would they apologize? Would they beg? Or would they try to fight back, scrambling for control they no longer had? Emma poured herself a glass of water and sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Philip was probably laughing with friends, celebrating his freedom, planning his future with Jessica. He thought he was free. He thought he'd escaped. But he was wrong. He wasn't free. He was just walking deeper into a trap he didn't see, a trap Emma had been building for months, piece by piece, brick by brick. She touched the silk scarf her mother gave her, the one she wore the night of the dinner. The lavender scent was fading now, but the memory wasn't. Patience, Emma, she whispered to herself. Just a little longer. 2 weeks felt like forever and no time at all. But Emma had waited this long. She could wait a little more. Because when the storm finally hit, when she finally stepped out of the shadows and into the light, it wouldn't just change her life. It would shatter theirs. And that was worth every second of waiting. Emma met her friend Rachel at a quiet cafe on the south side of town. The kind of place with dim lighting and corner booths where people went to have private conversations. Rachel was already there when Emma arrived, sitting by the window with 2 cups of coffee waiting. Rachel had been Emma's friend since college, one of the few people who knew her before Philip, before the marriage, before everything got complicated. She stood up when Emma approached and pulled her into a quick hug. "You look tired," Rachel said, studying Emma's face. "Are you sleeping?" Emma sat down and wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "Not much. There's a lot on my mind." Rachel leaned forward, her voice dropping. "I need to show you something. I wasn't sure if I should, but after what happened at that dinner, I think you deserve to know." She pulled out her phone and swiped through her photos, then turned the screen toward Emma. "I saw Jessica at a bar last night. She was with some friends, drinking, smoking, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world." Emma stared at the photo. Jessica held a cocktail in one hand and a cigarette in the other, her head thrown back in laughter. Her stomach was flat, her dress tight, her posture relaxed. There was no sign of pregnancy, no caution, no care. Emma felt something cold settle in her chest. She told Philip she's pregnant. Rachel nodded. "I know. Everyone knows. She's been parading it around like it's some kind of trophy. But Emma, look at her. Does she look pregnant to you?" Rachel swiped to another photo, this one showing Jessica dancing, her arms raised, her body moving freely. "I took these last night. I thought you should see them." Emma stared at the photos, her mind racing. She'd suspected the pregnancy was fake for weeks, but seeing the proof hit differently. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was real, documented, undeniable. "Can you send these to me?" Rachel nodded and tapped her phone. "Already did. Check your email." She reached across the table and touched Emma's hand. "I'm so sorry, Emma. Philip doesn't deserve you. He never did. And that woman is a liar." Emma pulled her hand back gently and picked up her coffee. "I know. But thank you for showing me. This helps more than you know." Rachel tilted her head. "What are you going to do?" Emma took a slow sip, letting the warmth spread through her. "Something I should have done a long time ago." She didn't elaborate, and Rachel didn't push. They sat in silence for a moment, the cafe buzzing quietly around them. Emma's phone buzzed on the table. A text from Philip. "Dinner tonight. We need to finalize things. Be there at 7. Emma read it twice, then set the phone down without responding. Rachel watched her carefully. "Are you going?" "No," Emma said simply. "I'm done having dinners with people who don't respect me." She stood up, pulling her coat on. "I have to go." Thank you again, Rachel. For everything. Rachel stood as well, her eyes worried. Call me if you need anything. I mean it, Emma. Anything. Emma nodded and left the cafe, stepping out into the cold afternoon air. The photos Rachel showed her were already burning a hole in her mind. She pulled out her phone and opened the email, saving the images to a secure folder. Then she texted Ms. Green. We have more evidence. Jessica's fake pregnancy confirmed. Photos attached. The reply came fast. Excellent. Adding it to the folder now. Emma walked slowly through the streets, her mind working through every detail. The fake pregnancy wasn't just a lie. It was a weapon Jessica used to manipulate Philip, to speed up the divorce, to position herself as the victim and the future. But it was also Jessica's biggest mistake. Because now Emma had proof. Cold, hard, visual proof that would destroy any sympathy Jessica thought she had. Emma reached her apartment and locked the door behind her. She went straight to her desk and pulled out the evidence folder, adding printed copies of Rachel's photos to the section marked Jessica Martin Fraud. Each photo was dated, time-stamped, and cross-referenced with Jessica's claims about the pregnancy timeline. Emma laid them out side by side, building the narrative. On one side, Jessica's text messages to Philip talking about doctor appointments, morning sickness, baby names. On the other side, photos of her drinking, smoking, and living like someone with no responsibilities. The contrast was damning. How do you defend a lie when the evidence is staring everyone in the face? Her phone rang. Emma glanced at the screen. Philip. She let it ring 3 times before answering. Hello. Where are you? Philip's voice was sharp, annoyed. I told you to be here at 7. It's almost 8. I'm not coming, Philip. There was a pause. What do you mean you're not coming? Emma, we need to finish this. The lawyers are waiting. Then let them wait, Emma said calmly. I'm not ready to sign anything yet. Philip's voice rose. Not ready? What is there to be ready for? This marriage is over. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it. Just sign the papers and move on with your life. Emma sat down slowly, her voice steady. I'll sign when I'm ready. Not before. She could hear him breathing on the other end, the frustration building. You're being difficult on purpose. This isn't like you. Maybe you never really knew me, Philip, Emma said quietly. Maybe you only saw what you wanted to see. She hung up before he could respond. Her hand trembled slightly as she set the phone down, but her resolve didn't waver. She opened her mother's diary again, flipping to the page she'd read 100 times. When people show you who they are, believe them. And when you finally act, make sure they never forget. Emma traced the words with her finger, feeling the weight of them settle over her like armor. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Philip was angry, confused, maybe even a little worried. Good. Let him wonder. Let him question. Let him feel even a fraction of the uncertainty she'd lived with for months. Emma pulled the silk scarf from her bag and held it to her face, breathing in the faint lavender scent. It reminded her of Sunday afternoons in her mother's kitchen, of lessons taught without words, of strength passed down through generations. Her mother had survived worse than this. She'd raised Emma alone after her father left, worked 2 jobs, kept her dignity intact even when the world tried to take it from her. Emma inherited that strength. She carried it in her blood, in her bones, in every quiet step she took toward justice. The next morning, Emma met Ms. Green at her office. The lawyer looked up from her desk as Emma walked in, gesturing to the chair across from her. I got your message. The photos are perfect. Jessica's lie is now documented beyond any shadow of doubt. Ms. Green opened the evidence folder and showed Emma the updated section. With this, we're not just proving she lied. We're proving she's a manipulator, a fraud, and someone who will say anything to get what she wants. The board will see this. Philip's family will see this. And more importantly, Philip will see this. Emma nodded, her jaw tight. Good. I want everyone to know the truth. Ms. Green leaned back in her chair, studying Emma carefully. Are you ready for what comes next? Once we present this in the boardroom, there's no going back. Philip will know you've been planning this. His family will know. Jessica will know. It's going to get ugly. Emma met her eyes, unflinching. It's already ugly. I'm just making sure everyone sees it. Ms. Green smiled, a rare expression of approval crossing her face. You're stronger than they think, Emma. Stronger than they'll ever understand until it's too late. Emma stood up, pulling her coat on. How long until the meeting? 1 week, Ms. Green said. 7 days. And then everything changes. Emma nodded and left the office, stepping out into the bright morning light. 1 week. 7 days. It felt like both an eternity and no time at all. She walked through the city with purpose now, her mind sharp, her plan locked in place. Every piece of evidence was gathered. Every document was organized. Every lie was documented. All that was left was the moment itself, the moment when she would stand up in that boardroom, slide the folder across the table, and watch their world collapse. Would they apologize? Would they beg? Or would they try to fight, scrambling for control they no longer had? Emma didn't know, and honestly, she didn't care. Because regardless of how they reacted, the truth would speak for itself. And the truth, cold and undeniable, was that Emma wasn't the weak, poor, pathetic woman they thought she was. She was the woman who owned everything they thought belonged to them. She was the storm they never saw coming. And in 7 days, that storm would finally break. The night started like any other family gathering, but Emma knew better. She stood in her bedroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The silk scarf her mother left her draped around her neck. The lavender scent was almost gone now, faded by time and too many tears, but the memory it carried was stronger than ever. Tonight would be different. Tonight would be the last time Philip's family saw her as the quiet, dismissed wife. She smoothed down her dress, simple but elegant, nothing flashy, nothing that demanded attention. She didn't need to demand anything. Soon enough, they'd give her all the attention she never asked for. Emma arrived at Philip's parents' house just before 7. The driveway was packed with expensive cars, gleaming under the porch lights. She walked to the front door and paused, her hand on the handle, taking one last deep breath. Inside, she could hear voices, laughter, the clinking of glasses. They were already celebrating something, probably the divorce, probably her departure. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The hallway was grand marble floors, high ceilings, paintings on the walls that cost more than most people made in a year. Everything about this house screamed wealth, power, and superiority. Emma had never felt welcome here, not once in all the years she'd been married to Philip. Tonight would be no different, except tonight she didn't care. She walked into the dining room and the conversation stopped. Every head turned toward her. Philip sat at the head of the table, his father to his right, his mother to his left. Jessica sat across from Philip, her hand resting on her flat stomach, playing the role of the pregnant girlfriend with perfect precision. Philip's younger brother was there too, along with a few cousins and family friends. All of them stared at Emma like she was an uninvited guest, someone who didn't belong. Philip's mother spoke first, her voice cold and clipped. Emma, we weren't sure you'd come. I was invited, Emma said quietly, moving to the empty chair at the far end of the table. She sat down slowly, folding her hands in her lap, keeping her face calm even though her heart was pounding. Philip leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine glass, a smirk on his face. Well, this should be interesting. I didn't think you'd have the guts to show up after last time. Emma didn't respond. She just looked at him, her expression unreadable. Jessica giggled softly, covering her mouth with her hand like she was trying to be polite, but failing. Philip's father cleared his throat. Let's just get through dinner, shall we? We have things to discuss. The first course was served, some kind of fancy soup Emma didn't recognize. She picked up her spoon and ate in silence while the conversation around her resumed. They talked about business, about vacations, about anything and everything except the elephant in the room. Emma listened, absorbing every word, every glance, every subtle insult hidden behind polite smiles. Philip's mother turned to Jessica. How are you feeling, dear? The pregnancy must be so exciting. Jessica beamed, placing both hands on her stomach now. Oh, it's wonderful. Tiring, but wonderful. Philip has been so supportive. She reached across the table and squeezed Philip's hand. He squeezed back, looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Emma watched the exchange, her jaw tight, but she said nothing. Not yet. Philip's father leaned forward. It's good to see my son finally settling down with someone who appreciates him. Someone who understands what it takes to be part of this family. The words hung in the air, a not-so-subtle jab at Emma. She set her spoon down carefully, meeting his eyes. And what does it take, exactly? The table went quiet. Philip's father blinked, surprised she'd spoken. Excuse me. To be part of this family, Emma said, her voice steady. What does it take? Philip's mother laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. It takes class, Emma. Breeding. Something you clearly don't understand. Emma nodded slowly, as if considering the words. I see. So class and breeding are more important than loyalty? More important than honesty? Philip slammed his glass down on the table, the sound echoing through the room. Enough. We didn't invite you here to lecture us, Emma. We invited you here to finalize the divorce. Sign the papers and let's all move on. Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel hurt. She didn't feel small. She felt something else entirely. Clarity. You invited me here to humiliate me, she said quietly. That's what this is. One last chance to remind me that I don't belong, that I never belonged. Philip leaned forward, his face twisted with irritation. You're being dramatic. As usual. Am I? Emma asked. She stood up slowly, pushing her chair back. Every eye was on her now, the room frozen in anticipation. You've spent years making me feel worthless, Philip. You've insulted me, dismissed me, ignored me. And tonight, you wanted to do it one more time in front of everyone. So go ahead. Say what you came here to say. Philip stood too, his chest puffed out, his confidence radiating. Fine. You want the truth? Here it is. You're not good enough for me, Emma. You never were. You came from nothing. You have nothing. And you are nothing. I don't know why I wasted so much time on you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded stack of papers. The same divorce papers from before. He walked around the table and stopped in front of her, holding them out. Sign these. End this. Stop dragging it out. Emma stared at the papers, then at Philip, then at the faces around the table. Jessica looked smug. Philip's parents looked satisfied. His brother looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. They were all waiting for her to break, to cry, to beg. But Emma didn't do any of those things. She took the papers from Philip's hand and set them on the table. Then she looked up at him, her voice calm and cold. You're just a poor fat pig. You should be grateful that anyone married you. Philip's face turned red. What did you just say? You heard me, Emma said. She picked up the silk scarf from around her neck and folded it carefully, pressing the fabric between her fingers. Actually, I'm quoting you, Philip. Those were your exact words to me at the last dinner. Remember? When you threw these papers in my face. She gestured to the documents on the table. You called me a poor fat pig. You said I should be grateful. And everyone here laughed. She looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. Every single one of you laughed. The room was silent now, the air thick with tension. Philip stammered, trying to recover. I didn't mean it like that. I was just... You meant it exactly like that, Emma interrupted. Her voice was quiet, but it carried weight, authority, something none of them had heard from her before. You meant every word. And you know what? I'm grateful. Not for marriage. Not for this family. But for the lesson. You showed me who you really are, Philip. All of you did. She picked up the divorce papers and held them up. You want me to sign these? Fine. I'll sign them. But not tonight. Not here. Not on your terms. She set the papers back down and turned toward the door. Philip grabbed her arm. Where do you think you're going? Emma looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. Let go of me. Her voice was ice. Philip hesitated, then released her. Emma adjusted the scarf in her hands and walked toward the door, her footsteps echoing in the silent room. She stopped at the threshold and turned back one last time. By the way, Philip, that company your father has been so desperate to save? The one you think you're running? You should ask him who really owns it. You might be surprised. She didn't wait for a response. She walked out, closing the door softly behind her, leaving chaos in her wake. Have you ever walked away from people who tried to break you and felt stronger with every step? Inside, the room erupted. Philip turned to his father. What is she talking about? What does she mean, who owns the company? His father's face had gone pale. I don't know. She's just trying to get under your skin. Jessica stood up, her voice shrill. She's bluffing. She's nobody. She doesn't have that kind of power. But Philip's father wasn't so sure. He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking slightly, and started dialing. Outside, Emma stood on the front steps, breathing in the cool night air. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline flooding her system, but she felt alive. She felt powerful. She felt like the storm her mother always said she could be. She walked to her car, got in, and drove away, leaving the house and its occupants to drown in their confusion. The board meeting was in 2 days. 2 days, and they would all know the truth. 2 days, and everything would change. Emma drove through the empty streets, her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The city lights blurred past her window, streaks of yellow and white against the darkness. Her heart was still racing from the dinner, from the way Philip grabbed her arm, from the look on his father's face when she mentioned the company. She'd planted the seed. Now she just had to wait for it to grow into full-blown panic. She pulled into her apartment building's parking garage and sat in the car for a moment, letting the silence settle around her. The engine ticked as it cooled. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ms. Green. How did it go? Emma typed back. Exactly as planned. They're confused. Scared. Good. She got out of the car and walked to the elevator, her footsteps echoing in the concrete space. Inside her apartment, everything was exactly how she left it. Clean, organized, controlled. She dropped her keys on the table and walked straight to her desk where the evidence folder sat waiting. The divorce papers Philip had tried to force on her were still in her bag, but she didn't touch them. Not yet. Not until she was ready. She spread the folder open across the polished wood, documents fanning out like cards in a game she was about to win. Corporate filings showing her majority ownership. Coded account receipts proving every transaction. Photographs of Jessica drinking and smoking while claiming to be pregnant. Text messages between Philip and Jessica discussing the fake baby, laughing about how easy it was to fool everyone. Bank statements showing the money Philip spent thinking it was his father's, not knowing it came from Emma's accounts. Every piece of evidence was organized, labeled, and cross-referenced. She'd spent months building this case, and now it was perfect, airtight, undeniable. Emma picked up her phone and called Ms. Green. The lawyer answered on the second ring. Emma, tell me everything. Emma sat down, pulling the folder closer. I told them to ask who really owns the company. Philip's father looked like he'd seen a ghost. Philip was confused. Jessica was defensive. They don't know what's coming, but they know something's wrong. Ms. Green's voice was calm, measured. Good. Let them panic. Let them scramble. The board meeting is in 2 days. By then, they'll be desperate for answers, and you'll give them everything they didn't want to know. She paused. Are you ready for this, Emma? Once you walk into that boardroom and present this evidence, there's no going back. Your life changes completely. Their lives change completely. Everything shifts. Emma looked at the folder, at the months of work laid out in front of her. I've been ready for a long time. I just needed them to show me they didn't deserve mercy. She could hear Ms. Green smile through the phone. Then let's make sure they never forget it. Placing it carefully in front of her, Ms. Green connected her laptop to the projector. They'll start arriving in about 10 minutes. Philip's father will come in first, acting like he owns the place. Philip will be right behind him, probably with Jessica. The rest of the board members are neutral, but they'll follow the power. Once they see the evidence, they'll fall in line. Emma nodded, her hands resting on the folder. What if Philip tries to interrupt? Let him, Ms. Green said, a slight smile on her face. It'll only make him look worse. The door opened. Philip's father walked in first, exactly as Ms. Green predicted. He was tall, gray-haired, wearing an expensive suit that screamed old money. He stopped when he saw Emma sitting at the head of the table. "What are you doing here?" Emma looked up at him, her expression neutral. "I was invited. This is a board meeting, isn't it?" "This is a private board meeting for stakeholders and executives," he said, his voice sharp. "You're neither." Ms. Green stepped forward. "Actually, Mr. Hale, Emma is the majority stakeholder. She has every right to be here. In fact, she called this meeting." Philip's father's face went pale. "What are you talking about? Majority stakeholder? That's impossible." "Is it?" Emma asked quietly. Before he could respond, the door opened again. Philip walked in with Jessica on his arm, both of them dressed like they were attending a celebration instead of a board meeting. Philip froze when he saw Emma. "What the hell is she doing here?" "That's what I'd like to know," his father snapped. "Someone better start explaining what's going on." Other board members began filing in, 7 in total, all of them older men and women who'd been with the company for years. They took their seats, glancing between Emma and Philip with confusion. One of them, an older woman named Mrs. Chun, spoke up. "I received a notice that this meeting was called by the majority shareholder. I assumed that was you, Richard." She looked at Philip's father. Richard Hale shook his head. "I didn't call this meeting. I don't know who did it." Ms. Green pressed a button on her laptop. The projector screen lit up, displaying the first slide. Corporate ownership structure. Emma stood up slowly, drawing every eye in the room. "I called this meeting. My name is Emma Hale, but some of you may know me better as Emma Carter, the anonymous investor who's been acquiring shares of this company over the past 8 months." The room went dead silent. Philip's mouth opened, then closed. His father leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. Jessica's confident smile faltered. Mrs. Chen's eyes widened. "You're Emma Carter? The investor who saved us from bankruptcy?" "Yes," Emma said simply. She clicked to the next slide. Timeline of acquisitions. "In March, I purchased 20% of the company through a shell corporation. In May, another 15%. In July, 18%. And last month, I acquired an additional 12%. That brings my total ownership to 65%. I am the majority shareholder of this company, which means I have full authority over all executive decisions, board appointments, and operational direction." Philip shot to his feet. "That's insane. You don't have that kind of money. Where would you even get it?" Emma turned to him, her voice calm. "From my inheritance. My father left me a trust fund when he died, one I didn't touch until I needed it. I used it to build an investment portfolio, and when I saw this company struggling, I saw an opportunity." "You're lying," Philip said, his voice rising. "My father would have known. He would have seen your name on the documents." "He did see names on the documents," Emma said. "Just not mine. I used legal intermediaries, shell companies, and my maiden name to keep the acquisitions anonymous. Everything was done legally, transparently, and with proper documentation." She clicked to the next slide. Legal filings and documentation. "Here are the corporate filings submitted to the state. Here are the stock certificates. Here are the notarized agreements signed by your father, Richard, agreeing to each sale." She looked at Philip's father. "You sold me the company piece by piece, and you never asked who was buying it because you were too desperate to save it." Richard's face turned red. "This is fraud. This is manipulation. You tricked me." "I saved you," Emma corrected. "This company was drowning in debt, losing clients, hemorrhaging money. I paid fair market value for every share, and I stabilized the finances. You should be thanking me, not accusing me." Mrs. Chun leaned forward. "Ms. Hale, if what you're saying is true, and you own 65%, then you have controlling interest. That means you can remove current executives and appoint new ones." "Exactly," Emma said. She looked at Philip. "Which brings me to the next point." She clicked another slide. Evidence of mismanagement and fraud. Philip's face appeared on the screen, A photo taken at a company event where he was laughing with clients while the financial report showed losses. Philip Hale has been acting as an executive consultant for this company. Despite having no formal training, no business degree, and no real understanding of corporate operations, he's made decisions that cost this company millions. He's approved contracts without proper review. He's hired unqualified friends into key positions. And he's done all of this while treating the company like his personal playground. Philip slammed his hand on the table. That's not true. I've worked hard for this company. Have you? Emma clicked again. Financial reports and losses. Here are the quarterly reports from the last 2 years. Every single one shows a decline in revenue under your oversight. Here are emails from clients complaining about your unprofessionalism. Here are expense reports showing you've been using company funds for personal trips, luxury purchases, and entertainment. She let the evidence sit on the screen, letting everyone absorb it. Philip's father looked like he wanted to disappear. The other board members whispered to each other, shaking their heads. Mrs. Chen looked disgusted. Emma clicked one more time. The final slide. Photographic evidence of Jessica Martin's fraud. Jessica's face appeared on the screen. Multiple photos showing her drinking cocktails, smoking cigarettes, dancing in tight dresses. All of them time-stamped during the months she claimed to be pregnant. Jessica stood up, her face white. Where did you get those? From someone who cared enough to document the truth, Emma said. You told Philip you were pregnant. You told his family. You used that lie to manipulate the situation, to pressure him into divorcing me faster, to position yourself as the future Mrs. Hale. But you were never pregnant, Jessica. You lied. She clicked again, showing medical records, credit card receipts, and text messages between Jessica and her friends laughing about the fake pregnancy. Here's the proof. No doctor visits. No prenatal vitamins. No ultrasounds. Just lies. Jessica grabbed her purse and ran for the door, slamming it behind her. The room erupted. Philip's father shouted at Philip. Mrs. Chen demanded answers. The other board members argued amongst themselves. Philip just stood there, frozen, staring at the screen like he couldn't process what was happening. Emma waited. She let the chaos build, let them fight and yell and scramble for control they no longer had. Then she spoke, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. Enough. Everyone stopped. Every eye turned to her. Emma placed both hands on the table, leaning forward slightly. This company belongs to me now. I've already filed the necessary paperwork with the state. As of this morning, I am the acting CEO. Philip, you're fired. Richard, you're removed from the board. The rest of you can stay if you're willing to work under new leadership. If not, there's the door. No one moved. Philip opened his mouth, then closed it. His father sat down heavily, his face buried in his hands. Mrs. Chun nodded slowly. I'll stay. This company needs real leadership. The others murmured agreement. Emma straightened, picking up the evidence folder. Good. We'll reconvene next week to discuss the restructuring plan. This meeting is adjourned. She walked to the door, Ms. Green following close behind. As she passed Philip, she stopped and looked at him one last time. Thank you for showing me who you really are. Then she left, the door closing softly behind her, leaving Philip standing in the ruins of everything he thought he controlled. Have you ever watched someone realize too late that they destroyed themselves? Emma had, and it felt exactly like justice. Emma walked out of the boardroom with Ms. Green beside her, their footsteps echoing down the empty hallway. Neither of them spoke until they reached the elevator. Ms. Green pressed the button and turned to Emma. You did it. That was perfect. Clean, precise, devastating. Emma nodded, but she didn't smile. She felt numb, like all the adrenaline that had been holding her up suddenly drained away. It's not over yet. Philip won't accept this quietly. He doesn't have a choice, Ms. Green said as the elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. You own the company. You have the board's support. He has nothing left to fight with. The elevator descended, and Emma watched the numbers drop. 15, 14, 13. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chun. Thank you for saving this company. Looking forward to working with real leadership. Emma showed it to Ms. Green, who smiled. See? They're already falling in line. By tomorrow, everyone will know you're the one in charge. The doors opened on the ground floor. They walked through the lobby, and Emma noticed people staring. Whispers followed them. The receptionist, who'd smiled politely earlier, now looked at Emma with something close to respect, maybe even fear. Word traveled fast in buildings like this. By the time Emma reached her car, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Texts, emails, calls from board members, investors, business contacts she hadn't heard from in years. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. How did the quiet wife become the powerful CEO? Emma ignored most of them. She got in her car and sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Ms. Green knocked on the window. Emma rolled it down. Are you okay? I don't know, Emma admitted. I thought I'd feel different. Happier. Something. But I just feel tired. Ms. Green leaned against the car. That's normal. You've been running on strategy and survival for months. Now that it's done, your body's crashing. Go home. Rest. Tomorrow, we start the real work of rebuilding this company. Emma nodded. What about Philip? What happens to him now? He'll try to fight, but he has no leverage. His father signed away the shares legally. The board supports you. Philip's reputation is destroyed. He'll probably disappear for a while, lick his wounds, maybe try to start over somewhere else. But his life as he knew it? That's over. Ms. Green straightened up. And Jessica? She ran out of that boardroom and hasn't been seen since. My guess? She's already looking for her next target, someone else to manipulate. But this time, everyone will know what she is. Her name is attached to those photos now. Good luck finding someone stupid enough to believe her again. Emma started the car. Thank you, Ms. Green, for everything. It's been my pleasure, Emma. You're stronger than you know. Ms. Green stepped back and Emma drove away, watching the building shrink in her rearview mirror. She drove through the city, not really paying attention to where she was going, just needing to move. Her phone rang. Philip. She declined the call. It rang again. Declined. Then a text. We need to talk. Please. Emma deleted it without responding. Another text, this time from Philip's father. You've destroyed my family. I hope you're proud of yourself. She almost laughed. Destroyed his family? They destroyed themselves. She just held up the mirror. Emma pulled into a parking lot and sat there, finally letting herself feel everything she'd been holding back. Anger, sadness, relief, exhaustion. It all hit her at once, and she gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. She thought about her mother, about the lessons learned in quiet kitchens, about strength passed down through generations. Her mother would have been proud. Or maybe she would have told Emma that revenge wasn't the answer, that forgiveness was stronger. But Emma didn't want to forgive. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Some things don't deserve forgiveness, do they? Her phone rang again. This time it was Rachel. Emma answered. Hey. Emma. Oh my God, I just heard. Everyone's talking about it. You're all over the business news. Anonymous investor revealed as scorned wife takes over husband's company. This is insane. Rachel's voice was excited, almost giddy. Are you okay? How do you feel? Tired, Emma said honestly. Really, really tired. I bet. Listen, I'm coming over. You shouldn't be alone right now. Before Emma could protest, Rachel hung up. Emma smiled despite herself. At least someone still cared about her as a person, not just as the woman who pulled off the corporate upset of the year. She drove home, and by the time she got there, Rachel was already waiting outside her building with takeout food and a bottle of wine. I figured you wouldn't have eaten, Rachel said, holding up the bags. They went inside, and Rachel unpacked the food while Emma changed into comfortable clothes. They sat on the couch, eating in comfortable silence for a while before Rachel spoke. So, are you going to tell me how you pulled this off? Because honestly, Emma, I knew you were smart, but this is the next level. Emma set down her fork. I just got tired of being small. Tired of letting people treat me like I didn't matter. So I did something about it. You didn't just do something. You took over an entire company without anyone knowing. That's not just smart. That's genius. Rachel shook her head. Philip must be losing his mind. Probably, Emma said. But that's not my problem anymore. Rachel raised her wine glass. To Emma Hale, the woman who proved that quiet people are the most dangerous. Emma clinked her glass against Rachel's. To not be underestimated ever again. They drank, and for the first time in hours, Emma felt something close to peace. The next morning, Emma woke up early and went to the office. Her office now. The CEO's office. She walked in and stood in the doorway for a moment, taking it all in. The massive desk, the leather chair, the view of the city. Everything Philip thought belonged to him now belonged to her. She sat down behind the desk and opened her laptop. Emails flooded her inbox. Business proposals. Meeting requests. Congratulations from people she'd never met. She ignored most of them and opened a folder labeled Restructuring Plan. Ms. Green knocked on the open door. Good morning, Madam CEO. Ready to get to work? Emma looked up. More than ready. What's first? HR wants to meet with you about Philip's termination paperwork. Finance needs approval on the budget reallocations. And the press is asking for an interview. Ms. Green set a stack of papers on the desk. You're in demand. Emma flipped through the papers. Tell HR I'll meet them at 10. Approve the finance budget. And no press interviews. Not yet. I want to focus on stabilizing the company first. Ms. Green nodded, making notes. Understood. Oh, and one more thing. Philip's father called this morning. He wants to meet with you privately. Emma looked up sharply. Why? He didn't say. But if I had to guess, he wants to negotiate, maybe ask you to give him back some control. Ms. Green's expression was neutral. What do you want me to tell him? Emma thought for a moment. Tell him I'll meet him. Tomorrow. Here. On my terms. Ms. Green smiled. Will do. She left, closing the door behind her. Emma leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. Richard Hale wanted to meet. Probably to beg, to plead, to try to appeal to some sense of family loyalty she didn't have. Or maybe to threaten her, to try to intimidate her into backing down. Either way, she'd hear him out. Not because she owed him anything, but because she wanted to see his face when he realized nothing he said would change her mind. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Philip. Emma, please. We need to talk. I made mistakes. I know that now. But we can fix this. Just give me a chance. Emma stared at the message for a long time. A part of her, the part that remembered falling in love with him years ago, wanted to respond. Wanted to believe he was sorry. But the rest of her, the part that remembered every insult, every dismissal, every moment of humiliation, knew better. People don't change just because they lose power. They change when they truly understand what they've lost. And Philip didn't understand yet. Maybe he never would. She deleted the message and turned off her phone. Today wasn't about Philip. Today was about rebuilding. About proving that she wasn't just someone who took revenge. She was someone who could lead, who could create, who could turn something broken into something strong. The company had been failing under Philip's father and Philip's arrogance. But under Emma's leadership, it would thrive. She'd make sure of it. Because success wasn't just about beating the people who hurt you. It was about building something they could never touch. Something that proved you were always stronger than they believed. Emma opened her laptop and started working, her fingers flying across the keyboard, her mind sharp and focused. Outside her window, the city buzzed with life. Inside her office, Emma built her empire, one decision at a time. And somewhere out there, Philip was learning the hardest lesson of his life. You can't humiliate someone and expect them to stay down forever. Eventually, the quiet ones rise. And when they do, the fall is devastating. Would you give someone a second chance after they destroyed you? Or would you make them watch you succeed without them? Richard Hale arrived at Emma's office exactly at 2 in the afternoon, escorted by Ms. Green, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. He wore a dark suit, his face drawn and tired, looking older than he had just days ago. Emma stood by the window watching the city below and didn't turn around when he entered. Ms. Green gestured to a chair across from Emma's desk. "Mr. Hale, please sit. Ms. Hale will be with you in a moment." Richard sat stiffly, his hands gripping the armrests. Ms. Green looked at Emma, who nodded slightly. Ms. Green left, closing the door with a soft click. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of traffic below. Emma finally turned around and walked to her desk, sitting down slowly, deliberately, letting Richard wait. She opened a folder and pretended to review something, making him sit in the uncomfortable silence. After a full minute, she looked up. "You wanted to meet. Here I am." Richard cleared his throat. "Emma, I think we got off on the wrong foot. This whole situation has been blown out of proportion." Emma leaned back in her chair, her expression neutral. "Has it?" "Yes. You have to understand, I was desperate to save the company. I didn't know who I was selling to. If I'd known it was you, I would have handled things differently." Emma's eyes narrowed. "You mean you wouldn't have sold it to me at all?" Richard shifted uncomfortably. "That's not what I meant. I just think there's been a misunderstanding. Your family, Emma. We should be working together, not against each other." Emma folded her hands on the desk. "Family. That's interesting. You sat at that dinner table and watched your son call me a poor fat pig. You nodded when he said I should be grateful anyone married me. You didn't say a word. You just agreed." Richard's face reddened. Philip was upset. "He didn't mean it." "He meant every word," Emma said coldly. "And you let him say it because you agreed with him. I was never good enough for this family. Was I? Not rich enough. Not connected enough. Not important enough. So you treated me like I was invisible, and when I finally became visible, you're shocked." Richard leaned forward. "I'm here to make things right. I'm willing to negotiate. You can stay as CEO, but let me keep a seat on the board. Let Philip have a smaller role, something he can rebuild from. We can salvage this, Emma. We can move forward as a family." Emma stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed, a short, sharp sound that made Richard flinch. "You think I want to salvage anything with you? After everything you've done? After everything Philip did?" She stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against it, looking down at him. "You came here thinking you could negotiate, thinking you still had power. But you don't, Richard. You have nothing. No company. No control. No leverage. You sold it all to me, legally and willingly, because you were too proud to admit you were failing." Richard's jaw tightened. "I built that company from nothing. It's mine." "It was yours," Emma corrected. "Now it's mine. And under my leadership, it'll be what it should have been all along. Successful, ethical, respectful." She walked back to her chair and sat down. "This meeting is over. Ms. Green will escort you out." Richard stood abruptly, his face red with anger. "You think you won? You think this is over? I'll fight you, Emma. I'll take this to court. I'll prove you manipulated me, tricked me into selling." Emma picked up a document from her desk and slid it across to him. "Go ahead. Try. Here's every contract you signed. Every agreement. Every stock transfer. All of it legal, all of it witnessed. All of it notarized. You have no case, Richard. Your lawyers will tell you the same thing." Richard grabbed the document, his hands shaking. He stared at it, then threw it back on the desk. "You'll regret this." "The only thing I regret," Emma said quietly, "is not doing it sooner." Richard stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Emma sat still for a moment, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. Then she picked up her phone and called Ms. Green. "He's gone. Make sure security knows he's not allowed back in the building without an appointment." "Already done," Ms. Green said. "How did it go?" "Exactly as expected. He tried to negotiate, then threatened me when that didn't work. Typical." Emma hung up and turned back to her computer. She had work to do, and Richard Hale was no longer her concern. That evening, Emma was sitting in her apartment when her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello." "Emma." It was Philip. His voice was different, quieter, almost broken. "Please don't hang up. Emma closed her eyes. What do you want, Philip? I just want to talk. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Emma walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. You have 3. Philip exhaled shakily. I messed up. I know that. I was arrogant, I was cruel, and I took you for granted. I thought I was better than you, and I wasn't. I'm not. I'm sorry, Emma. I'm truly sorry. Emma's grip tightened on the phone. You're sorry because you lost everything. Not because you hurt me. That's not true. I've had time to think, to really think about what I did. And I hate myself for it. I hate that I made you feel worthless when you were the best thing I ever had. His voice cracked. Is there any way we can fix this? Start over? I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. Emma felt something twist in her chest, but she pushed it down. Philip, you didn't just hurt me. You humiliated me in front of your family. You threw divorce papers in my face. You called me names I'll never forget. And you did it all while lying to me, cheating on me with someone who faked a pregnancy to trap you. She paused. You want to know if we can fix this? The answer is no. Some things can't be fixed, Philip. Some things are just broken forever. Philip was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. I understand. I just needed to hear it from you. He hung up. Emma stood by the window for a long time, the phone still in her hand. Part of her felt sad. Not for Philip, but for the version of herself who once loved him, who believed in him, who thought they'd build a life together. That version of Emma was gone now, replaced by someone harder, sharper, stronger. She didn't know if that was better or worse. She just knew it was necessary. The next morning, Emma walked into the office to find entire staff gathered in the main conference room. Ms. Green stood at the front, waiting. What's this? Emma asked. A welcome, Ms. Green said. The staff wanted to officially meet their new CEO. Emma walked to the front of the room, and everyone went quiet. She looked at the faces staring back at her, some curious, some skeptical, some hopeful. She took a deep breath. I know most of you don't know me, and the ones who do probably only know me as Philip's wife. But that's not who I am anymore. I'm Emma Hale, and I'm here to rebuild this company into something we can all be proud of. She paused. I'm not going to lie to you. The last few years have been hard. Bad decisions were made. Money was wasted. Trust was broken. But that ends now. Under my leadership, we're going to focus on 3 things. Quality, integrity, respect. We're going to treat our clients with respect. We're going to treat each other with respect. And we're going to build something that lasts. She looked around the room. If you're willing to work hard, to be honest, and to help me rebuild, then I want you here. If you're not, there's the door. No hard feelings. But decide now, because starting today, everything changes. No one moved. Then, slowly, one person started clapping. Then, another. Then the whole room erupted in applause. Emma felt something warm spread through her chest. Not pride. Not satisfied. Just relief. Relief that maybe, just maybe, she could turn this disaster into something good. After the meeting, Emma returned to her office. Ms. Green followed her in and closed the door. That was a good speech. They needed to hear that. Emma sat down at her desk. I meant every word. This company deserves better than what it's been getting. Ms. Green set a folder on the desk. Speaking of better, Jessica Martin tried to contact the office this morning. She wants to meet with you. Emma looked up sharply. Why? She didn't say. But my guess? She's panicking. Her lies are public now. Her reputation is destroyed. She probably wants to apologize or beg you to somehow fix it. Ms. Green's expression was cold. What do you want me to tell her? Emma thought for a moment. Tell her I'm not interested. She made her choices. Now she has to live with them. Ms. Green nodded and left. Emma opened the folder and found the latest financial reports. The company was stabilizing. Clients were returning. Revenue was climbing slowly but steadily. It would take time to fully recover, but they were on the right path. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Saw your speech online. You're a natural leader. Proud of you. Emma smiled. At least someone saw her for who she really was. She looked at the photo on her desk, the one of her mother. I did it, Mom. Just like you taught me. Quietly, patiently, completely. She touched the frame gently, then turned back to her work. Outside, the city buzzed with life. Inside, Emma built her future, one decision at a time. And somewhere out there, Philip and his family were learning that humiliation doesn't just disappear. It follows you, haunts you, reminds you every day of what you lost. Would you ever forgive someone who destroyed you, or would you let them live with the consequences forever? 6 months had passed since the boardroom revelation, and Emma stood in her office watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and pink. The company had transformed under her leadership. Revenue was up 40%. Client satisfaction scores were the highest they'd been in 5 years. The staff trusted her. The board respected her. Everything she'd fought for was finally real. She walked to her desk and sat down, pulling open the bottom drawer where she kept the things that mattered most. Her mother's diary, the silk scarf, and a sealed envelope she'd been avoiding for months. Her mother had left it with her lawyer years ago with specific instructions. Give this to Emma when her heart is no longer safe. Emma had picked it up the day after the board meeting, but she hadn't been ready to open it. Until now. She carefully broke the seal and pulled out a handwritten letter on her mother's familiar stationery. The handwriting was shaky, written during her final weeks, but the words were clear. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means you faced something that hurt you deeply. Something that made you question who you are and what you're worth. I wish I could be there to tell you this in person, but since I can't, I'm writing it down so you'll always have it. You are not defined by how people treat you. You are defined by how you respond. I raised you to be kind, but kindness doesn't mean weakness. I raised you to be patient, but patience doesn't mean accepting abuse. I raised you to be gentle, but gentleness doesn't mean you can't be strong. Whatever you did to protect yourself, whatever choices you made to survive, I'm proud of you. Not because you fought back, but because you refused to stay small. The world will try to make you feel guilty for standing up for yourself. Don't let it. You have every right to claim your space, your power, your dignity. Use what I left you wisely. Not for revenge, but for building something beautiful. Something that honors the woman you've become. I love you, Emma. Always. Mom. Emma set the letter down and pressed her hands to her face, trying not to cry. But the tears came anyway. Quiet and steady, washing away months of tension she didn't know she was holding. She'd been carrying so much guilt, wondering if what she did was right, if she'd gone too far, if her mother would have been disappointed. But her mother understood. She'd always understood. Emma wiped her eyes and looked at the photo on her desk. Thank you, Mom, for everything. She folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the drawer, next to the diary and the scarf. Then she stood up and walked to the window, feeling lighter than she had in months. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ms. Green. Board meeting in 20 minutes. Ready to present the quarterly results. Ready, Emma typed back. She straightened her jacket and left her office, walking through the halls with confidence. Employees greeted her by name now, smiling, respectful. She wasn't just the CEO on paper. She was their leader, someone they believed in. The boardroom was already full when she arrived. Mrs. Chun sat at her usual spot, reviewing documents. The other board members chatted quietly, coffee cups in hand. Everyone stood when Emma entered. She gestured for them to sit. Good morning. Let's get started. She opened her laptop and pulled up the presentation. Revenue growth, client retention rates, employee satisfaction scores. Every metric showed improvement. Mrs. Chin nodded approvingly. These numbers are remarkable, Emma. You've done in 6 months what we couldn't do in 3 years. Emma smiled. It wasn't just me. The entire team stepped up. We all wanted the same thing. A company we could be proud of. One of the board members, an older man named Mr. Jacobs, leaned forward. What about the Hale family? Have they tried to cause any more problems? Emma shook her head. Richard Hale contacted me once through his lawyer, trying to negotiate a settlement. I declined. Philip has stayed quiet. Last I heard, he moved to another state, trying to start over. Jessica disappeared completely. No social media, no public appearances. She's probably looking for her next victim somewhere else. Mrs. Chun frowned. Good riddance. People like that don't change. They just find new people to manipulate. The meeting continued for another hour, covering expansion plans, new client acquisitions, and staffing changes. By the end, everyone was satisfied. Emma closed her laptop and stood. Thank you all for your continued support. This company is only as strong as the people who believe in it. As everyone filed out, Mrs. Chin stayed behind. She waited until they were alone before speaking. Emma, can I ask you something personal? Of course, Emma said, sitting back down. Mrs. Chin hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Do you regret it? What did you do to Philip and his family? I'm not judging. I'm just curious. Emma thought for a moment. I regret that it had to happen. I regret that Philip couldn't just be a decent person. But do I regret standing up for myself? No, not for a second. She met Mrs. Chen's eyes. I spent years making myself smaller, quieter, less important, hoping that would make them love me. It didn't. It just made them think I was weak. So I stopped being small. And the moment I did, everything changed. Mrs. Chun nodded slowly. You're braver than most people I know. Braver than I was at your age. She stood up, gathering her papers. Your mother would be proud. Emma felt her throat tighten. Thank you. That means more than you know. Mrs. Chun left, and Emma sat alone in the boardroom for a moment, letting the silence settle around her. She thought about the woman she used to be, the one who sat quietly at dinner tables while people insulted her. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who refused to be invisible. She didn't know if that was better or worse. She just knew it was necessary. That evening, Emma went home and poured herself a glass of wine. She sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker to life, thinking about everything that had happened. Her phone rang. Rachel. Hey, are you busy? I'm in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by. Come over, Emma said. 20 minutes later, Rachel was sitting on the couch, takeout food spread across the coffee table. They ate and talked about nothing important, just two friends catching up. But eventually, Rachel asked the question Emma knew was coming. So, are you happy? Emma set down her fork. I don't know. I'm satisfied. I'm relieved. But happy? I'm not sure what that feels like anymore. Rachel reached over and squeezed her hand. You've been through hell, Emma. It's okay to not be happy right away. Just don't forget to let yourself feel something other than anger and determination. Emma smiled. I'll try. They finished eating, and Rachel left around 9. Emma cleaned up the dishes, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat down with her mother's diary. She flipped to a page near the end, one she'd read a dozen times. Strength isn't about winning. It's about surviving with your dignity intact. Emma closed the diary and held it against her chest. I survived, Mom. And I kept my dignity, just like you taught me. She stood up and walked to the window one last time, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Philip was trying to rebuild his life. Richard was probably still bitter, still angry, still convinced Emma had wronged him. Jessica was hiding, her lies catching up with her. But Emma wasn't thinking about them anymore. She was thinking about tomorrow, about the company she was building, about the life she was creating. A life where she didn't have to apologize for taking up space. A life where her voice mattered. A life where she was finally truly free. The next morning, Emma arrived at the office early. She unlocked her door and walked to her desk, setting down her bag and pulling out the silk scarf. She draped it over the back of her chair, a reminder of where she came from, of the lessons her mother taught her, of the strength she carried inside her all along. Ms. Green knocked on the open door. Good morning. You're here early. Couldn't sleep, Emma said. Too much on my mind. Ms. Green walked in and sat down. Good things, I hope. Good things, Emma confirmed. I've been thinking about expansion. Maybe opening a second office. Hiring more staff. Taking on bigger clients. Ms. Green smiled. That's ambitious. I like it. I spent too many years playing it safe, Emma said, trying not to make waves. But playing it safe didn't protect me. It just made me vulnerable. So I'm done with that. From now on, I'm taking risks. Building something that lasts. Ms. Green stood up. Then let's get to work. They spent the morning reviewing expansion plans, drafting proposals, and scheduling meetings with potential investors. By noon, Emma felt energized, focused, like she was finally living the life she was meant to live. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Emma, this is Philip. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know something. I signed the divorce papers. No lawyers. No drama. Just signed them and sent them to your lawyer. You're free now. I hope you find happiness. I really do. I'm sorry for everything. Emma read the message twice, then set the phone down. She felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No relief. Just nothing. And maybe that was the best outcome. Maybe the opposite of love wasn't hate. Maybe it was indifference. She deleted the message and turned back to her computer. She had work to do, a company to run, a future to build. And for the first time in years, that future belonged only to her. Emma looked at the photo of her mother on her desk, at the scarf draped over her chair, at the evidence folder tucked safely in her drawer. Everything that happened, every betrayal, every insult, every moment of humiliation, had led her here. To this office, to this life, to this version of herself that refused to be small. She didn't know what the future held. But she knew one thing for certain. She would never let anyone make her feel worthless again. She would never apologize for being strong. And she would never, ever forget the woman her mother raised her to be. Gentle but not weak. Patient but not passive. Kind but not foolish. Emma Hale was no longer the quiet, dismissed wife. She was a CEO. A leader. A woman who turned humiliation into power and pain into purpose. And that was a legacy worth building. Would you forgive the people who broke you? Or would you leave them behind and build something they could never touch? Emma chose to build. And in doing so, she became unstoppable. Thanks for watching. Make sure to drop a comment below telling us the part of the story you enjoyed most.